Let's see. Okay, there we go. Good evening, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to the special edition of the S&P Sports Show. I'm your host, Shawn Stewart, on this April 26, 2023, on this as well, these NFL Draft Eve, if you want to call it. So I have my co-host, Mr. Anthony Paulus. How are you doing, my friend?
I'm good. I was at American Family Field today, right behind the Tigers dugout. Everything was good except the Tigers lost, but other than that, it was good. Miguel Cabrera waved at me, so it was not a bad day, other than the Tigers losing. So it was nice.
And I also have two great news. So the first news is I will be at Ford Field on Sunday to be at the Michigan Panthers home game. So that's the first news. Great news.
Now, is that going to be all season long, Shawn, that you'll be at every Panthers home game?
Yes.
Good to know.
It is. Yes. And the second one is that No House Advantage has update, but I think you'll more likely will like about this when we do the player props. So it's a fantastic move they have done. So I'll tell you about that when we do the player props. So
all right. More about the player props from them in a little bit. Yep. All right. Let's get to it. Let's just get to the draft because
I was going to ask you that question. I was going to be ready to ask that question.
Tonight's show is all about football. It's all about the draft. We'll talk a little bit, Aaron. Well, you know what? Let's talk Aaron Rodgers first, and then we're going to do draft.
Because I was ready to ask that question.
So in the end, who won the trade? Let's just get to it. Okay? And it's pretty simple. Shawn, let me ask, before I give you my answer, I want to know your perspective. Who do you think won the trade?
Right now, Green Bay Packers won that trade. And I was going to ready to ask this question. Well, you can go ahead.
Well, okay, so we agree. The Packers won the trade. So let me give you a breakdown here. The Jets flinched. They got nervous. My goodness. You knew that he's not coming back to Green Bay. Okay? You knew the Packers were going to be in cap hell. The Packers had no leverage. None. And I'm sorry, but Joe Douglas, Woody Johnson, I don't know who, they acted like some simps. Simps.
Yes, they did. SIMPS.
They acted like some straight up simps.
Like they're desperate.
Now, let me go ahead and give you a statistical breakdown on this, okay?
Please do.
So, let's break it down by the picks involved, okay? Even before I get to the money breakdown. Okay? So, the Jets gave up pick 42 and then they swapped their first rounders. That's like the equivalent of pick 34 in the draft, in a normal draft. But with there only being 31 first rounders, it's basically the equivalent of giving up the first pick in the second round, which is like essentially a first rounder, okay?
Okay.
Now, as for the 2024 compensation, 65% of the snaps, and there's no guarantee past 2023. I mean, let me tell you, that's 11.05 games is the average. Okay?
Ooh.
That's basically 11 games. It's 11 games, Shawn. So if he plays essentially 12 games, we'll say 11 and a half, the Packers are getting that first round pick. What happens if the Jets suck? And that's a top 10 pick. I mean, let me give you an example, okay? The Rams gave the Lions 2 first-round picks, right?
Right.
And what did that second pick turn out to be? Pick 6 overall. I mean, if the Jets somehow suck this year and Rodgers plays a full array of games, I mean, we could be talking at a pick somewhere between 6 and 10 here. I mean, you got to remember the Jets are in the same division as the Patriots, the Dolphins, and the Bills, all teams.
Bills.
And I'm sorry, the AFC is a little bit more competitive. You can finish 5-12, 6-11, be a top, finish in the top 10 for your draft pick, and it goes to Green Bay. You had all of the leverage in this deal, all of it, and you acted like some busters. Yeah, I said it, some straight up busters. They acted like they were. So let me give you a boxing analogy, okay? It's like a shorter fighter fighting a taller fighter, with the taller fighter having all the physical advantages, but the taller fighter deciding to fight like a smaller fighter. Okay? That's essentially what the Jets did. They succumbed. I don't know if it was media pressure, Woody Johnson. I don't know. But for this trade to take this long and then to give up that amount in those terms, I just don't get it. Dude, Brett Favre was a 40-year-old quarterback, 39, and he went for a 4th-round pick. I'm sorry. I know you're desperate for quarterbacks, but
you didn't have to give up all the picks like that for a first.
Let me say this: you could have got Lamar Jackson for 2 firsts, essentially.
That would have made a lot more sense. But
the one thing, though, we're going to talk about the money here now. Okay, so the Packers ended up eating $40 million plus of dead cap money with the trade, and the contract terms are somewhat favorable for the Jets. $15 million this year, $32 the next. Okay? That's pretty reasonable for a player of Rodgers' stature. But still, you knew that he wasn't going to stay in Green Bay. You knew his time was up. And you're right around the draft. I mean, who was going to take him at this point? Who was going to take him seriously? Tell me a contending team that was going to take him at this point.
I can't.
Besides the Jets. Nobody. Nobody was going to pay that price the Jets paid. They're a bunch of simps. Simple as that. And that's why the Jets continue to suck and will suck and are the epitome of suck. They're a bunch of simps. Yep, I said it. Sorry to bust your chops, Jets Nation. You know, you may improve this season to, 9-10 wins, but you don't have enough to get over the top. I don't care that you signed Alan Lazard and Hardman, and you already had Garrett Wilson, and Breece Hall is back, and you have a good defense. It's not enough. Your offensive line is trash. I'm going to tell you right now, the Jets better draft an offensive tackle or an offensive lineman at 15 on tomorrow night. Because if there's one thing that the Jets couldn't do last year, it was their offensive line. It was trash.
I said that. Yeah, I absolutely agree. It wasn't even that good
for protection. There you go. Now, let's get to the draft. Carolina pick 1, taking a quarterback. I mean, there's some rumors out there it's going to be Will Levis, but I just can't see it. It's got to be Bryce Young. I mean, everything is there. I know he's only 5'10", and just maybe just a hair under 200 pounds, but all the tests, the measurables, everything else, it's there. If it can work for Russell Wilson, it can work for Murray in Arizona, even though it really doesn't. You know, it's got to be Bryce Young. Now, I think 2 is where things start because I do not see the Texans taking a quarterback. They're either going to probably take Will Anderson. They're either taking Will Anderson or Tyree Wilson with that pick tomorrow. They're taking a defensive end because the quarterback class in 2024 is going to be even stronger, I feel. And they got Davis Mills, who to me, people are like, well, Justin Fields, let me tell you, with just as much bad crap on his team, I think Davis Mills played pretty damn good last year, considering he didn't have much to throw to.
Right.
I mean,
that says a lot about a quarterback.
A half-injured Brandon Cooks is about what he had to throw to. Wow. So I can't blame. You know what? I think they're going to roll. I think they're going to end up rolling the dice, taking a D end, either Wilson or Anderson, and that leaves the Cardinals at 3. Well, we know they're not taking a quarterback. They're probably looking to trade down. Question is a team wanting to jump ahead of Indianapolis to take a quarterback at 3? I don't know. So they're probably going to sit there at 3, and if they have to make the pick, it's going to be a defensive lineman. Question is, whoever the Texans take it to, that leaves one of 2 options at 3. I mean, will a team move up? I mean, I would probably say the biggest rumor of a team moving up is probably Detroit from 6 to 3. I don't know if it'll happen. But, I mean, Arizona's in a position to trade down. I don't know how. This is the week of lying, as I like to call it. Everybody's throwing lies out there, and, you don't know what to believe.
And rumors and stuff like that.
And, I think the biggest issue is, what is Arizona going to do at 3? Because I think the Texans are taking a defensive lineman at 2. Question is, what happens at 3? Are they keeping the pick or not? Because I'm pretty sure Indianapolis is taking a quarterback at 4. The best thing that can happen to Detroit would be a team to move up to 3 and take a quarterback, and then the Colts take a quarterback at 4. If 3 quarterbacks are off the board before 6, Detroit is jumping up and down. I don't care which one of the 3 guys it is. If it's Jalen Carter or Will Anderson, they're throwing a party in Detroit. Because then at 18, you can go best player available. Most likely a corner, they would probably go at 18, but we'll get into that later.
Okay. Because I really do want to see what the Colts are going to do with that pick. Because
the Colts are taking a quarterback. They're definitely taking a quarterback. I just don't see them not taking anything else but a quarterback there. They kind of have to.
Right. Because your previous quarterbacks haven't done well that good anyway.
I mean, then you got the Seahawks sitting there at 5, right? They need defensive line help in the worst way. And there's also talk of them taking a quarterback, but you just extended Geno Smith out 3 years. I just don't see them taking a quarterback at 5 this year because they signed Geno to a 3-year deal with all that money. So I don't see that happening. So I see the, if Jalen Carter's there at 5, that would probably be who I would think they're going to take. Some people have said that they love Anthony Richardson. Yes, he's a freakish athlete. I mean, are they willing to take a quarterback at 5? I don't know. I mean, the Seahawks made the playoffs. Are they looking to improve? Then you take a defensive tackle. If you're looking to continue the rebuild, then you're maybe looking at Anthony Richardson as the future replacement to Geno Smith, and you're going to bench him for a full year because Anthony Richardson ain't ready to start. But if you're in the right system and you bench him and everything else, yes, a year could do miracles. Look at Patrick Mahomes. He didn't play at all his first year, and look what happened. And Anthony Richardson's got some freakish athletic talent. But I mean, I think Arizona and Seattle are kind of like, where it is. I mean, but I see the Colts having to take a quarterback.
They have no choice but to do that.
I mean, they need a quarterback. I mean, you really think they're going to roll with Gardner Minshew? I just don't see it.
That's stupid. And they need to work on that offensive line.
I mean, yeah, and they need offensive linemen too. I mean, put it like this. They're drafting 4. Their second round picks probably going to be some type of offensive line help. They need tackle. They need guard. Their that offensive line was just atrocious last year.
Right.
I mean, they need corners also, but I mean, at this point, I don't know, unless they get some type of amazing offer to trade back from 4, then get a quarterback and I just don't know at this point. But they're getting a quarterback for sure.
Right. I can't see them passing with that 4th pick, not getting a quarterback. That's just mind-boggling.
I mean, unless like Anthony Richardson or somebody like that slid down the board into the 20s and they traded back up. I mean, they need corners. They need offensive linemen. I mean, it's crazy. Let's get to the Lions. Defensive tackle, linebacker, wide receiver, tight end. Probably the biggest needs. I think they're probably pretty good on the offensive line front.
You did say that before.
I mean, corner, definitely a need. I still say. Okay? Corner, a need. Defensive tackle, a huge need. Because put it like this, if you don't get a defensive tackle at 6, how high are they on the kid from Pittsburgh, Clancy, at 18? You don't take one there, then what? Then what are you going to do? Round 2, take a tight end? I mean, take a tackle. I mean, there are a couple of defensive tackles still available in free agency. I mean, Ashawn Robinson is still out there, former Lion, really good run stuffer. I mean, what are we looking at here? I mean, that's a huge question, I think. The other thing is, I think whatever Seattle does is going to be very reflective on Detroit, because Seattle has the 5th pick and the 20th pick in this draft. And the Lions had the 6th and the 18th.
Okay.
So, I mean, both teams have multiple picks.
Which is good, if you think about it.
I mean, D tackle, corner, linebacker, wide receiver. You know, those are the Lions' four biggest needs. Maybe a quarterback in like round 5, something like that.
I can see a situation like that. But the defense needs to be improved if I were Detroit.
I mean, you need corners. You need a D tackle to stop the run. I mean, the Carolina game was like,
for real, like really.
And the New England game, they just couldn't stop the run.
Like you have to stop the run if you want to be legit.
And that New England game, they also couldn't stop Matthew Judah for some reason. My goodness. Still having nightmares of him coming around the corner. You know, the Raiders at 7, man, I just cannot see them drafting CJ Stroud with Jimmy G. I just can't. Not this year. I just can't see it. They need defense in the worst way in Oakland.
Las Vegas.
Or Vegas now. Everybody's leaving Oakland.
Right.
Everybody.
Who the A's? But yeah.
You know, they need defense. What do the Raiders need? Linebacker. They need corners.
Because they don't have a legit.
They need corners. They need defense. Man, they need everything on defense. They need everything. Okay? You know, that's what they need. They need defense. They shouldn't even think about drafting offense. And for the first 3 rounds of this draft, at least, it should be all defense from the Raiders. That's how bad that defense is. It's bad. It's not good.
And they get let go.
They can't stop. Mainly, they can't stop the pass. The secondary is trash. I mean, it's just not good. All right, Falcons at 8. They've got tight end. They got quarterback. They spent a lot of money in free agency. They've addressed their offensive line. I think they've addressed the D line. I mean, they need offensive tackle. Is their biggest need. Got to protect Desmond Ridder, who I think could hold up here. They're going to, you know, you need an offensive tackle. You need a running back because Cordell Patterson's like 30-something years old. I mean, could they take Bijan Robinson? Could they take the best offensive tackle on the board and Paris Johnson or Skorowski? I mean, I think they're a prime candidate to trade down from 8 because they're a team where they can go down in 3 or 4 picks and still get a quality offensive tackle that they want. They can get corner, linebacker, edge rusher, offensive tackle. They got needs. Wide receiver, they definitely need.
Yeah.
But I don't know if drafting one at 8 is worth it. Where if they traded down to like 11 or, you know, with the Titans and the Titans moved up to 8, there you go. I mean, I kind of see like Atlanta and Tennessee as possible trade partners because that would allow Tennessee to move up to get a quarterback at 8 and allows Atlanta to slide down at 11 and they can get offensive tackle or wide receiver. I mean, I don't know if the Titans are going to even draft a quarterback, but we'll get to that in a minute.
Right. And then
But Atlanta's got a lot of needs. Wide receiver, offensive tackle, probably the two biggest needs. Then at 9, you got the Bears. They spent a lot of money this offseason. They're not going to be drafting a linebacker at 9. They need an offensive tackle. And most likely they're going to take an offensive tackle at 9. They've got their 3 wide receivers. They got a tight end. They need an offensive tackle to protect Justin Fields.
That's correct. Because he was running all over the place.
So there you go. There they could use some defensive line help, but the 3 top defensive linemen will be off the board by then. So address the offensive line, and then you can worry about the pass rush in round 2. Well, there's always free agency and a 1-year deal. They could try to find like a Frank Clark or somebody like that and sign him to a 1-year deal. And bring some heat for the pass rush. There's some good pass rushers still in free agency who I think are going to get good, who are going to get 1-year deals that pay a lot of money. I mean, could the Bears be one of those teams? They could. Pick 10. The Eagles acquired it from the Saints. Here's the thing we're looking at. Could they draft Bijan Robinson and pair him up with Jalen Hurts and the rest of that offense? That could be really scary. What happens if Jalen Carter somehow slips to 10 and is there for the Eagles with that defense? Bijan Robinson, running back in the future, pair him with Hurts.
Oh my goodness, that'd be so dangerous.
And AJ Brown, man, offense would be
fantasy football. We're talking
great. Man,
that's fantasy football.
I mean, what other positions can we think of for the Eagles that they need?
More the defensive side I can think of.
I can see offensive linemen. I mean, offense is getting a little, that offensive line is getting a little long in the tooth. Lane Johnson, Jason Peters, Kelsey, they're all getting a little older. I could see some youth being injected into that offensive line. Defensively, there's not going to be a defensive lineman worth that pick at 10. So, they like drafting corners through the Eagles. They like corners. They like wide receivers. I mean, could they draft a kid from Ohio State? Who knows? I mean, I kind of think more along the lines, Bijan Robinson could be there. Not sure if you want to get your value at 10 with a running back. I mean, I see the Eagles as a team in the end that either they need to trade up and make some kind of monster move from 10, or they need to trade back and get, if they really like Bijan, try to trade back a bit and then get them like 13, 14. I don't know. The Jets and the Eagles, to me, could be logical trade partners for some reason. Because the Jets need an offensive tackle, and the Eagles could trade back 3 spots and take Robinson at 13. I don't know. I know the Jets need an offensive tackle, but they're at 15, actually. I could see the Jets and the Eagles making a swap. We'll see. 11.
Okay. The Titans.
Everybody's rumoring them for a quarterback. They need a wide receiver.
Because I can't think of any wide receivers they got right now.
Man, let me tell you, they need a wide receiver. They got nobody at wide receiver. Exactly. Nobody. So if they don't take a quarterback at 11, I would assume that Jackson Smith-Obaja would be the guy at 11. They need a wide receiver. 12 is the Texans. No, they didn't draft a quarterback at 2, most likely. Will they take a quarterback at 12? I don't know. I personally think they're going to roll with Davis Mills. So I see like Anderson or Wilson at 2, and I see probably like an offensive lineman or a wide receiver at 12. Could be the kid from Ohio State.
I think I know what you talk about. That offensive
I
line
mean,
from Ohio State.
I think the Texans, with having 2 picks, I think they're very open to trading that number 2 pick because they need to move down and gain more picks and pieces and players and stuff.
Right, because they do need to build that team from the ground up.
I mean, I mean, the Texans having 2 and 12. I mean, I think the Texans and Cardinals want to trade down, but you got to find trade partners.
Right.
Now, 13, the Packers. Team that needs wide receiver. Bad. They need another wide receiver. Okay? Christian Watson, Romeo Dobbs, Torrey. That's about it.
Exactly.
I mean, there's just, what else do the Packers need besides wide receiver in the worst way? Offensive line might be getting a little old. They need a defensive tackle, I would say, because they couldn't stop the run.
Oh yeah, they definitely couldn't stop the run, especially when
They could use a defensive tackle. They could use an edge rusher. Like I like Nolan Smith with the Packers. They play kind of that similar system. They have a liking for Georgia defenders. I mean, I can see the Packers, but the Packers haven't drafted a wide receiver in the first round in like 20 years.
Amazing.
And at 13, I can see Nolan Smith being that guy at 13. And then them taking a wide receiver, the Packers making some kind of move from 42, because they got 2 second-round picks and moving up a little bit like they did last year. They traded up and got Christian Watson. I see something similar for a wide receiver, just like they did last year and trading up to the top of the second round and getting a wide receiver there. So they'll probably move up from like 42 to 34, 33 or something like that tomorrow, and they'll get their wide receiver, I think, there. I think like Nolan Smith just seems like a logical fit for them. I don't know if there's a D tackle is worth that pick at 13. They can always get another defensive tackle in the draft. Kenny Clark, he may not be there after this season, but we'll see. But they need D tackle. They need an edge, offensive lineman, wide receiver. I would go with an edge player.
Okay.
Now we're at what? We're at pick 14 now.
The Patriots.
Right? Well, obviously Mac Jones is probably a bust. They need wide receivers. That we know. They need wide receivers.
A running back.
They got Ramondre Stevenson, but they need a running back, a Bijan Robinson.
Exactly.
They need Robinson, a wide receiver. Probably their 2 biggest needs. wide receiver and running backs. You got decent backs, but nothing breaking.
Right. Like an impactful player, in other words.
If you got Bijan Robinson, you might need to start calling the Arizona Cardinals about Hopkins and work something out for a trade. Because, there are going to be trades in this draft, okay? Even though we're kind of going down the order here, okay?
Okay.
I expect like 6 to 8 trades in the first round. And some players will get dealt. Like, Arizona wants to move Hopkins, but he's got that contract. A team doesn't want to take on that full $19 million. So, if the Cardinals can lower their demands a little bit and eat a little bit of that, they might be able to get a good, like a third-round pick. I've heard the Patriots, I've heard the Giants, I've heard the Ravens regarding Hopkins. Will that trade happen? I don't know. But I'm going to say this. If he's traded, man, Hollywood Brown better be able to step up and be healthy next year, or they are in serious trouble in Arizona. But we already know how I feel about Kyler Murray.
Oh, yeah, we've said that in previous time.
Yep, Jets at 15, we've already talked about. They need an offensive tackle. Biggest need.
Enders.
16. So here's the thing, right? We're at pick 16 now, halfway point in the draft. Right?
Correct.
And, this draft, I just don't think it's as strong as the last couple drafts. Like, after you get about top 15 kind of guys, it kind of, narrows down a little bit. This draft just doesn't have the deeper talent in terms of first round grades as past drafts. So what are we looking at here in pick 16, Shawn?
They almost made it to the playoffs. You already got a quarterback.
You're kind of near there. Exactly. You're kind of near there, and we're at pick 16. So, you're at the halfway point. So you're at where the Commanders are picking. Okay? What are the needs for Washington? Well, first off, they didn't take the 5th-year option on Chase Young today. Talented, but injury-prone.
Yeah.
What do you need in Washington? Well, offensive line, quarterback. Are they really going to roll with they really going to roll with Howell from North Carolina, their 5th-round pick last year? Or is a quarterback going to slip to them? Let me ask this. If Anthony Richardson is slipping down the board and he's there at 16, are you taking him after nightmares of Dwayne Haskins? But, man, the kid's he's an athletic freak.
I wouldn't take that risk if I were Washington.
Anthony Richardson's athletic freakness is crazy. Here's the thing. If whoever drafts Anthony Richardson, they are singing him for a year. If you're Washington, would you take him knowing that you're going to sit him for a year?
If you're going to do that route, you're more likely going to have to draft him.
Washington needs a quarterback. They need what they need. They could use another wide receiver, but they need offensive line help
for protection.
They need linebackers, but I don't really see a linebackers kind of a little weak in this draft. It's kind of tough. They could use some corners.
Oh, yeah. They definitely need a corner.
So I can see them going corner or offensive lineman unless a quarterback is there that just blows their mind. Okay, so that takes us to 17.
That's Pittsburgh. Barely made it to 500.
Well, they need wide receivers.
Offensive line for the running
Offensive line in the worst way.
They need
Hey,
to rework that defense.
I can see Pittsburgh moving up from 17 to the low teens to get an offensive lineman. They need about 3 offensive line. See, they need a power grade run blocking type of offensive lineman.
For Najee Harris.
Man, they need to. You need to be able to protect your quarterback and improve the run game. You need wide receivers too, but I mean, at this point, I think Pittsburgh might have to trade up from 17 to like 11, maybe even 10, and get an offensive lineman. They need an offensive lineman. I mean, not one to the point where they're going to give up next year's first round pick, but they need an offensive lineman. And there may not be one of quality at 18, 17. We'll see. Offensive lineman, wide receiver, 2 biggest needs for that team. And then I would say corner after that. Those are the 3 biggest needs. Detroit at 18. Well, probably kind of depends what they do at 6, what they do 18. If they somehow draft a corner at 6, let's pray they don't take a tight end at 18.
That's too high.
You take a tight end at 8. First round tight ends in this league just don't work out. And I think with Brad Holmes trading TJ Hawkinson, he knows that. Otherwise, he wouldn't have made that move and traded Hawkinson, I feel, just to draft another tight end in the first round at 18. Other than the money value, which wouldn't really be that much. I just don't see it. I could see the Lions drafting a tight end in the second round with 2 second-round picks at 48 and 55. Okay? That I see. I can see them moving up in the second round, taking 48 and 55 and moving that up. Okay? And doing something. That much I can see. That much I can see for sure.
Now we're number 19, Tampa Bay.
They need a running back, Bijan Robinson,
they need to stop
quarterback, running back, wide receiver, doubtful. They need a running back. I mean, Leonard Fournette is still available. Zeke Elliott's still available. I mean, if you take Bijan Robinson, then you're set for the next some odd years. I mean, there are still talented running backs available in free agency. Hard to believe, right?
Right. That's amazing.
Fournette. I mean, it's not like he had a bad season.
Right. He had a good season.
We're at 20 now. Seattle, they need defense. They need offensive linemen, defensive linemen. Simple as that. They're going to take a defensive lineman, I'm assuming, at 5. So if they somehow, let's say, took Jalen Carter at 5, then I would say defensive end or an offensive lineman at 20. So I think that's fair to say. They've got running back. They got wide receivers. They're good. Their secondary is good. They can use a little bit of. So now we're at 21.
Right. The Chargers.
Defense, offensive line, defense. It's pretty simple. Defense, defense, defense. Pretty simple.
And they made it to the playoffs.
They need defense. All right. 22.
Baltimore.
Could they draft a quarterback in the future? Could they draft Anthony Richardson if he fell?
I don't know.
Same for the Vikings at 23. Anthony Richardson's there at 23. I think they're pulling the trigger. Perfect situation. Anthony Richardson can sit and learn from Kirk Cousins. Perfect situation. And they're kind of in a rebuild anyways, a little bit. But at 22, Ravens, they need wide receivers. And that's right around where all these wide receivers are graded. So wide receiver definitely could be Bijan Robinson, but he'll probably be off the board by then. You know, wide receiver, biggest need for the Ravens. Yeah, they got Odell for 1 year, and they got Nelson Aguilar, Duvernay, Bateman. Guess that depends if they feel Lamar's coming back. Anthony Richardson, if he somehow slides to 23, I think it's a wrap. Vikings, Anthony Richardson, bench it, let him sit for a year, maybe even 2 under Kirk Cousins, or a year and a half, because I think, and then make that transition. That way you're stable and set at quarterback. 24.
Jacksonville.
They got wide receiver. They need linemen on both sides of the ball. They need offensive linemen. They need defensive tackles. They need secondary. Pretty simple. Any defensive position, pretty much, other than they need a whole lot of defense and offensive linemen. Okay, next.
Jacksonville.
Yep, we already did them.
Oh, you the Giants. Giants 25th Giants.
Wide receiver.
Oh yeah.
The wide receiver.
Defense. Corner.
Linebacker. Man, they can use a pass rusher. Man, offensive line. They need offensive line. Wide receiver. Pretty much best player available. Next.
You said next? It's the Cowboys. Dallas Cowboys at 26.
Well, let's see here. You could use a wide receiver. Yeah, they said it. Wide receiver right here kind of fits the mold for Jerry Jones. Could go corner. You need defensive line help. You need some offensive line help. You need a tight end because you lost Dallas Schultz. So a lot of needs, best player available, but that's kind of where you're at. Next.
Buffalo Bills at 27.
Well, they need a running back who can stay consistent.
Yeah. Exactly. So that way,
I would say, here's the thing with Buffalo. They need offensive linemen.
Yes.
And they need defensive linemen who can stay healthy. Because you know what? Buffalo was kicking butt and taking names, but then all these injuries to all their pass rushers.
That plagued them.
And then by the time they got to the playoffs, they had no pass rush, and the Bengals just destroyed them. Just destroyed it because they had no rush. They had no pass rush at all in that game against Cincinnati because everybody was hurt. Now, if those guys can stay healthy, it's cool. So are you going to address pass rush? You definitely need some offensive linemen, and you need a running back. Let me say this.
Sure.
The Vikings are looking to try to probably shop Dalvin Cook. Now, he's got a $14.4 million on his contract for this year. I can see a trade where the Bills work it out, the Vikings eat a little bit of that money, and he goes to Buffalo and he plays with his brother. Okay, next up, we got a couple minutes.
Cincinnati Bengals at 28.
Tight end is a big need.
Offensive line.
Interior offensive line, I think they've addressed that with the signings. They're good at tackle. They need maybe a guard. They're
good on corner.
They could use a safety, tight end, offensive guard. That's where I say the biggest needs are.
Okay. 29th is the New Orleans Saints.
Man, they got a lot of holes. Offensive line. Michael Thomas, let's see if he can stay healthy. They lost a lot of players on defense and free agency. So, D-line is probably a big area of need to fill. I would say some type of defensive lineman. Doesn't matter which one. Probably whoever the best one available is at 29. I can see them being a candidate to trade down from 29. I really could try to rack up some extra picks because I don't know where they're at. So I could see them trading down a couple spots and going into day 2. So,
yeah. 30th is
all right.
Philadelphia.
Well, Eagles' biggest needs, as we talked about, safety would be logical here at 30. They need D linemen, safety, running backs, corner.
Yeah, we can already say that.
Pretty much, I'm going to say it. Some type of defense. Any one of those 3. Best player available. And then we got the last pick of the round. The Chiefs.
The defending champs.
What do they need right now?
A tackle?
My goodness. Man, I mean, Jamar Gibbs wouldn't be that bad of a pick at 31. Oh, that would be scary. What do they need? Well, they could use a wide receiver, maybe. Corner, wide receiver, pass rushing edge, because you lost Frank Clark. I mean, who knows? Maybe they can get Frank Clark back on a 1-year deal. Who knows?
Right.
Best player available, but it needs to be team need also with like an edge rusher. They need, they got needs to fill. Edge rusher to me is standing out in defense. Those are like the 2 right now that are standing out to me. Unless there's an offensive lineman of severe quality that's there, but in the interior maybe. But it's probably going to be a defensive player.
Okay.
And that, other than that, I'm sure, closing remarks here, I'm sure the Bears will mess this up as normal. So, and I'm sure the Commanders will mess it up too. Those are the two teams I think are bound to mess things up in this draft.
Goodness gracious.
And then once the Browns start picking, they'll, they don't have a first round pick, but they got the Jets second rounder and they got their own. So, they can probably fill some spots on defense, most likely, is where they'll need the project. They can maybe use a wide receiver also. And the Broncos, they need offensive linemen in the worst way. I expect probably an offensive line pick with that second round pick that they got. Most likely. Could be a running back too, because I don't know what's going on with Javon Williams with those two ligaments, and they signed Perrine from the Bengals, and who knows? Maybe Jamar Gibbs early in round 2 if he's on the board. Offensive lineman. We'll see.
All right. Okay. So, of course, as you know, we're doing the player props. So you can sign up at nohouseadvantage.com using promo code S4A for a 100% deposit match up to $100. So if you put 50, you get 50. If you put 100, they'll give you 100. And the new fee ad is like this. So that for the 4-leg and 5-leg parlay. So if you get 5 out of 5, you get 12 times the amount. And if you were to miss one pick, you'll get 2.6 of that amount on the 5-leg parlay. And if you miss one on the 4-leg, you'll get 1.6. So this is only available for the 5 or 4. So you got to pick 5 or 4 people in order to play. And also it's permanent. So just want to let you know about that. So that's great news. Okay. First one, De'Aaron Fox, 24.5 points.
I'll take the over.
Okay. Next one, Steph Curry, 5 3-pointers.
Sure, why not?
Okay. Harrison Barnes, 4.5 rebounds.
Sure. Yes.
Okay. And then Drew Holiday, 7 assists.
Yeah, they're at home.
Right. And last but not least, if you live in Michigan, the number is 1-800-270-7117. Wisconsin, 1-800-426-2535. And in Ohio is 1-800-589-9966. So those are the numbers for Gambling Hotline. So that's it. So Diehardfan with Cornelius Cole will be on after this show. So anything before we leave?
We'll break it all down Tuesday.
Exactly, for the recap. So,
Yep.
as usual. So, thank you guys very much and enjoy the draft.
Yep.